You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a very special guest with us. We're always looking for people just throughout the connection and just throughout the world who do really, really cool things. And today we have Deaconess Linda Tucker with us, who is the owner / caffeine dealer at T3 Roasters. Linda, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I have got to get a better business card. Caffeine dealer is probably the best title I've heard in a long time. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, so I always tell people I'm originally from North Carolina. I grew up in Texas, and I've lived here in Oklahoma for 15 years now. So this is kind of our home. My husband, Gary, and I, we've been married for 18 years. We have a 7-year-old daughter, and so we are your coffee dealers and your coffee family. So before I got into this, I spent 18 years serving in youth ministry, both in Texas and Oklahoma. And then I spent quite a couple years after that doing community outreach and chaplaincy and grief support and things like that. So I've kind of been all over the place over the years and never really imagined that I would end up in the coffee business. But that's where we have landed now. So and I graduated from Phillips Theological Seminary in 2019 with my MDiv, and 2019 was a great year, and then 2020 hit and things just happened, and the world just changed, and that is when our coffee business kind of hit the ground running. So it kind of started as a hobby. I actually wasn't a coffee drinker at that time. Now I actually love a great cup of coffee, but it was Gary's hobby, and it just kind of snowballed into what it is today. And I love that the opportunities that it presents itself. As a deaconess, that is my official ministry setting is coffee, and the way that coffee really just brings people to the table and opens up conversations and ways to serve our community, both locally here where we are and then globally around the world. So that's kind of what we're into these days.
That's awesome. One, I find it fascinating that you weren't a coffee drinker until you tested your own product, right?
Yeah.
But a good coffee makes a difference. But really, too, leaning into that, into your call as a deaconess and bringing people together, and coffee doing that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's any context across really the world that coffee clutches and coffee groups and just small gatherings of people coming together over a cup of coffee isn't a thing, right?
Yep.
Like it is a part of maybe global culture in some ways, or in a lot of ways.
And I think what's really interesting about that is, like even not being a coffee drinker, coffee has always been a staple. Like when I look back on my life, so when I was in high school, we were the kids that, our youth pastor probably hated us because he'd kick us out of the church because we just never wanted to leave. So we would leave church and go hang out at the local Starbucks and just kind of hang out and continue our conversations. And when I got to college, the coffee shop is where you went for study groups and to build new relationships and go on first dates. And, then even later on in life, after I had my daughter, like the coffee shop was where I'd go hang out with other moms and we'd meet each other's babies. And, and when people are in, other seasons of life, grief and mourning, when there's a loss, you go have a cup of coffee, because there's just something comforting about that, and about that environment and that atmosphere. And even if it's not a cup of coffee, if it's a cup of tea or just something warm that just brings people together over that cup, whatever is in it, it's really powerful and really sacred, and love that's what we get to do every day.
Yeah, I loved how in the little kind of the blurb that you sent us, I loved how you wrote that you created a blend because the coffee at the church wasn't all that great. And I can attest, like I've been in churches where the coffee was just like, no, like I can't, like I just can't on Sunday morning. No, like I will go either grab something from somewhere else or I'll make it myself. And have definitely, I'm glad you're willing to do that for churches or have that available for them, because man, I'm sorry. I mean, there's no way. Folgers just needs to go. Like it should just be banned. Like I think it does harm. Like I just do. Not that, there are people that love it, and more power to you, but man, like I just, for me, a good cup of coffee is being able to taste all the notes in it. And that's something that I've learned over the last few years. Being at various coffee shops, all over Oklahoma, and now getting to explore new ones in Colorado. I always like to ask certain questions, like, do you know what's in your coffee? Like what, those things. And, one of the things
who roasted your coffee, where your beans came from.
Yeah. Or what altitude they came from, because the higher the altitude, the less likely they use insecticides. And like having that kind of knowledge is kind of cool, but I also feel kind of like, I know I'm a coffee snob just as much as I am a craft brew snob. But you talk about you strive to use your voice to educate the community on social justice and issues surrounding the coffee trade. What are some things that, you'd be glad to share with our listeners thinking about that?
Yeah, so there's a whole lot that goes into coffee. And like you said, people just don't think about it. It's always on the shelf whenever you go to the store. So you just grab it. And like you said, Matt, churches are just stereotypically known for bad coffee. And that is a poor outpouring of hospitality, in my opinion. And that's a whole other thing. And just kind of the backstory for people that don't know that part of it. So our very first coffee blend that we ever created as or even before T3, was when Gary was just roasting as a hobby. It's called our Sunday morning blend. And he legitly made it because he got tired of drinking bad coffee at church on Sunday morning. And this was, pre-COVID, when people were gathering. And what he was noticing was that people were actually leaving the church and going other places, and then bringing their coffee in for worship and missing out on that really sacred time in the church. So he said, I'm going to create a coffee. I'm going to call it Sunday morning blend. We're going to drink it at Sunday mornings. It was intended just for our church, really, to kind of bring people together. And now we're able to share that that's one of our most popular blends. That's one of our signature blends. One of the things that we get to do is we get to supply coffee wholesale to any place that has a coffee pot. So we get to, there's a lot of churches around Oklahoma that are serving Sunday morning blend on Sunday morning, and has actually seen attendance increase actually because of that. So that's a whole other thing that we can get into. But, as far as coffee, like I said, people don't really think about coffee and where it comes from. And I think it's really important to know there's a lot of child labor. There's a lot of exploitation. There's just a lot of unfair, injustice practices within the coffee trade. And so one thing that's really important for us is we do direct trade. All of our beans are specialty grade coffee, direct trade from the farmers. So by doing that, we can ensure that our farmers are getting not only a fair price, but a living wage, not only to support their farm, but their entire community and their entire family. And so we've got some great partners that we're working with on that front. And one of the coolest coffees that we have that I love is we have our La Morena, which is a coffee from Guatemala. It's grown exclusively by a co-op of women farmers, and a portion of that coffee supports gender equality in the coffee trade, because most of our coffee growing communities are struggling communities. And then also being a woman within that is a struggle as well. So our Guatemalan coffee is grown exclusively by women farmers. But what's really great is our partners on the ground working with those women. It actually started with a group of 23 women that came together to work on their farms. And our partners not only help them produce their crop, but teach them techniques on how to take care of the land, how to have a better production, how to increase their production. And over the years, that program has grown significantly. And so after a couple years of doing this, people started asking the question, well, okay, like we see that there was a need for women farmers and we're able to come in here and do this, but what else do these communities need? How else can we help? And so one of the things is child labor is huge in a lot of these coffee communities. And one thing that we don't realize is a lot of the schools are closed during harvest season, specific, for a purpose. And so these coffee farmers don't have anywhere for their children to go. So their children end up going out to the farms with them. We all know what it's like to be a parent and school closes and you got to do something with your kids. So you just take them with you. They end up working in the coffee farms. So our partners were able to come up with a program called Coffee Kindergarten, which is a program for the children of coffee farmers, for giving these children a safe place to go, meals to eat, giving them social interaction and continuing their education during the seasons, during harvest season when school's not in session. So these children are not out in the coffee farms, on the coffee fields. That's been a really successful program. So then they started asking other questions. Who else can we help? What else is going on in these communities? Well, there's more than just women farmers. There's women artisans as well. And so our partners were able to get together with a group of women artisans, and they designed a custom bracelet from Guatemala. They were able to purchase enough to be able to kickstart a business, and now you can go and purchase one of those bracelets. It's actually really great. It's the La Morena bracelet. It actually tells the story of the coffee bean. It goes through the journey of the coffee bean with all the different colors. So, coffee is a fruit. It's actually the seed of a fruit for people that don't know that. It grows on a tree and it comes in a little red cherry. And the coffee beans are actually the seed inside. So it starts as the red cherry. Once the seed comes out, it's dried and processed, and that's it. It becomes green. Those little seeds are green. And so as a roaster, when we receive those beans, we receive they're green. People always say, oh, you're a coffee roaster, your house must smell amazing all the time. So green coffee does not smell anything like the coffee bean that we're used to drinking in our cup. It actually has a very grassy and almost a hay-like smell to it, depending on the bean and the region. But it really doesn't smell that great. It's actually not until the last 2 or 3 minutes of the roast that you actually start to get that coffee aroma that comes out. But then in that process, the coffee goes from the green bean through the roasting process to the brown. So, you have those colors of the reds and the greens and the ambers and the browns is the full transformation of the coffee bean. And so, with our projects and with our partners and with these communities, we're not just purchasing coffee beans, we're really impacting an entire community and ensuring their livelihood and their future as well.
I thought you were going to say something, Matt.
So did I. And I was just mesmerized. I just I think that's stuff that people need to hear. And that, I know in a lot of Methodist churches, you'll see where they have the fair trade, stuff. And that's kind of helped. That's kind of, I know for me, that's what started my process of understanding that where coffee comes from, and some of the struggles that come with that. I think that's viable to know. It'd be really cool, if you wanted to raise a ruckus in your church, ask them, do you know where your coffee beans come from and what kind of harm may be done with the coffee beans that you all choose to use on Sunday morning, and I think it could lead to some really good conversation. I think it's a great place to what a better place to do it than having it around a cup of coffee, which is usually the primary conversational place in most churches. Our church has a little coffee shop that the youth run, and it's been fun to listen to my children learn how to do different things with beans, and I'm excited. I haven't had anything that they've made yet, but I think that it is something that can bring us together, not just sitting around the table, but also having that connection to the farms. And like, I think that that's a really great way to bring that awareness into, congregations or, places wherever your coffee is served, to highlight that, and to be aware of that is definitely a great ministry and way to share kind of knowledge of what's going on around the world.
And I think especially now, people, at least here in my community, there's a big push for, shopping small and buying local and knowing where your food comes from, right? And so there's a difference between getting a beef patty from, your local fast food versus getting a meat patty from your local farmer where you actually like know the name of the cow where that came from. And so that's kind of the same concept within coffee. And coffee is like anything else. There's a commercial grade and there's specialty grade. And so I always encourage people, like you said, Matt, to know, ask the question, where do your beans come from? Who roasted your beans? Are they? And there's also a big distinction between fair trade and direct trade as well. And so I always encourage people to look into that. Because sometimes, getting fair trade beans, it sounds really great and it's a good thing, but sometimes it's not always the best thing as well. So I always encourage those conversations.
Well, and that's the thing. It seems like over the last handful of years, we've been asking more and more intentional questions about where does our stuff come from, and especially in circles like we run in, and that tend to be trying to be more social justice oriented, right? And when we ask those questions, where does our coffee come from? Where does our food come from? Where do our clothes come from? We have to listen to the answer, right? And you're exactly right. Fair trade sounds great. That's been a great label that we've put on things for a while, but doesn't always mean the same thing. It doesn't always mean what we think it means, or to the extent that we think it means. And so, yeah, asking those questions leads into the deeper conversation of what else? What else do we need to be asking questions? What else do we need to be seeking, justice for? And if we're going to preach and teach about this at a church, right? We got to live into it. And, it's a practice what we preach type of a thing. And what an easy way to start with in coffee. The thing that many, 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 many of us dread and enjoy about Sunday mornings. I am thankful to be in a place that they make the coffee well enough that it will stain your cup before it gets cold. Which is wonderful. It keeps you going on a Sunday morning. But there's just a lot of love and hope poured into a cup of coffee and the fellowship and conversation that happens around it. And it does that's the important question of where does it come from? How do we get it? And how do we make sure that love and grace is extending outwards into those communities, and how this thing that we take advantage of and privilege in, a cup of coffee, is actually helping people in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I love that work. Be super shameless for us for a minute. Where can we get your coffee?
So if you're in the Oklahoma area, so we are in Skytick, and we sell in a lot of retail locations and supply coffee shops, businesses, churches, all that kind of stuff. We actually this year will be moving to Collinsville. For anybody that knows where that is, we have we're in the process of doing a complete restoration on a building in the historic downtown area to be able to move our roastery and help us grow. So we're super excited about that. But we also have a website. It's t3coffeeco.com. You can check us out there. We ship nationwide. So we do everything from 12-ounce bags that you serve in your kitchen to 50-pound bulk containers for people that, businesses and coffee shops that go through hundreds of pounds of coffee a week. We can do it. We do both whole bean and ground. So that's kind of a big thing. Some of the fun things that we get to do, like I said, our retail, our wholesale, any place that has a coffee shop or coffee machine, we can supply to. We also do a lot of fundraising. We have a coffee fundraising program, which is another way that we get to give back to our community. And our groups actually get to design a custom label and name their own coffee that they get to go out and sell. And we have some groups that are doing some amazing things with their coffee fundraisers. We'll work with anybody that wants to raise money, whether it's, churches sending kids to camp, vacation Bible schools, sports teams, schools, anything like that. We actually had one group, we're starting to get into, we had a group do a mission project with a coffee fundraiser during COVID, which I think was the most amazing thing. It was a church that they were wanting to serve their community and go out and help, but it was COVID. And so people were kind of stuck at home. And so they were trying to think outside of the box and ways that they can do that. And so they started selling our coffee. And what they did is they picked some different organizations locally, both locally and globally. And all of the proceeds that they collected from that fundraiser went directly to those organizations. And then we were able to highlight them on their sale on our bags. One of the coffees they sold was our La Morena coffee, which we talked about, and that their church actually had a medical mission that helped women and children in Guatemala. And so they were able to send all the proceeds of that over there to their communities. And then they were able to help Still She Rises here in Tulsa, which is another great organization. So there's lots of really great things. And then we also do custom orders. Anything that you can dream up and put on a coffee bag. We have one guy that does his Christmas card every year with coffee and they put their family photo on the label and send it out to their friends and family during the holidays. So we get to do a lot of fun things and things that, I never, we're all meant to be creative, and we're creative beings, and we can be as creative as possible. If somebody has an idea and wants to dream it up, we'll help you do it. So that's kind of some fun stuff we get to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me there's a bearded theologian blend.
Yeah, I was actually getting ready to ask, do we get our own? When do we get our own blend? Given our state of things, we don't want to raise any money. We just want to have something with our stuff on it.
We can make that happen. Famous. I know you guys already have cups.
We have more than just cups.
A plethora.
A plethora of cups and T-shirts and stickers. And so it's always fun to share. We're definitely crunched for time today, and definitely would love to, we'll definitely, feel free to come back on anytime that you would like. Yeah. I hate to say it, you're not the first Deaconess we've had on the program. You're our second one. We had one talk about that call. It's been 2-3 years now. We're definitely thankful for you and the work that you do in the community, and so glad to hear what you're doing, and looking forward to hearing from you more in the future. Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up today?
I just really appreciate you guys having me on and let me share a little bit about our coffee and our ministry, and really maybe changing people's perspective, kind of asking those tough questions about, what's in your cup and where did it come from, and how can we get there? And we haven't even touched on, the whole hospitality in the church thing, and what does that say? What does that say about your church when, you're known for bad coffee? Mm-hmm. We can go there another day too, but yeah. Like I said, I really appreciate you guys, and we'll work on a blend for y'all. We'll make that happen.
Yeah. So when you get the blend, you can come back on the show. We'll talk about that and the blend. Let's just agree upon that. Okay. I think that would be a great way of doing that. Thank you for your time today. And like I said, we'll definitely get you back on and have you, share more, and definitely have those conversations around hospitality. That's something that's really big for Zach and I, and definitely look forward to having you on at a later date as well. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.